Two men watch the same war on two different screens. One sees a liberation, the other sees an invasion. Both are certain, both have evidence. And both would bet their lives that the other one has been brainwashed. Neither is lying, neither is stupid, and neither chose what they believe the way they chose what to eat for breakfast. Something was placed inside both of them before the first headline was read. And the thing that was placed there is not an opinion. It is a program, one that was written by someone they will never meet, tested on populations they will never see, and installed through a system so precise that the man running the program will swear on his children's lives that the program is his own original thought. Last Thursday, someone sat across from a person they love and felt something rupture. Not a disagreement, a fracture. The realization that the person sitting 3 feet away is living inside an entirely different reality, and nothing, no evidence, no logic, no history, no patience, nothing will move them. Not because they are wrong, because whatever is inside them is load-bearing. Challenge it, and the whole person shakes. The eyes harden, the jaw tightens. The voice drops half an octave, and something older than reason takes over the conversation. That thing is not conviction. That thing is the installation defending itself, using the host's own body. There is a specific silence that arrives after those arguments. Not peace, exhaustion. Two people who love each other sitting in the same room inside two different realities, both knowing that the next sentence will either be a lie or a war. The phone fills the gap. The fracture stays hairline, permanent. That fracture is in millions of homes right now, and the blame stays horizontal. He is brainwashed. She cannot see the truth. The blame never points upward. Because the system needs the argument to stay at the dinner table. Two people fighting about who is brainwashed will never look up to see who built both programs. The system that built them has a name. And the name is the thing the system cannot survive: manufactured truth. Robert Greene wrote in the 48 Laws of Power that the best deceptions are the ones that seem to give the other person a choice. Law 3. Conceal your intentions. The most dangerous form of concealment is not hiding the lie. It is presenting two lies and letting the target choose between them. The choice feels like freedom. The architecture is a prison with two doors that open into the same room. That is what a manufactured truth is, not a lie. A lie can be disproved. A manufactured truth is a belief that was engineered to feel organic, installed before the recipient could choose, reinforced by every institution they trust, and defended by the recipient's own nervous system, as if it were bone rather than code. It is load-bearing. Remove it, and the identity collapses, and the person carrying it will call the carrying free will, because that is the installation's most elegant feature. The host does not protect the software because the software is good. The host protects the software because the host believes the software is the host. Sit with that for a second. Now watch the architecture operate in real time. A man watches CNN. The anchor frames a conflict using specific language: humanitarian intervention, rules-based order, defending democracy. The images are selected to produce sympathy for one side and suspicion of the other. The man absorbs the frame. It confirms what his previous installations have prepared him to believe. His chest relaxes. The information feels correct, not because he verified it, but because it is compatible with the software already running. Across the city, another man watches Fox News. The same conflict. Different language, government overreach, failed foreign policy. The elites do not care about working Americans. Different images, different emotional frame, the same relaxation in the chest. The same feeling of confirmation. The same absolute certainty. Across the ocean, a third man watches Al Jazeera. The same conflict. A third language. Colonial legacy, Western hypocrisy, the voices the other networks erased. A third set of images, a third emotional frame, a third certainty, 3 men, 3 screens, 3 manufactured truths. And not one of them is watching news. All 3 of them are watching narrative architecture, the structural engineering of what populations believe. The news is not the information. The news is the delivery system. The information is whatever the installation requires. Green wrote another law that applies here with surgical precision. Law 32. Play to people's fantasies. People do not want to hear that the truth is complicated, ambiguous, and uncomfortable. They want to hear that the truth is simple, their side is correct, and the other side is either stupid or evil. Every network on Earth understands this. Every algorithm understands this. The fantasy is not the content. The fantasy is the certainty. And certainty is the most addictive product the narrative architecture sells. It is the drug that makes a man feel informed while being installed. Machiavelli saw the manufacturing line 5 centuries before any of these networks existed. In 1513, writing in exile, he documented the engineering specifications. The successful prince does not need his subjects to be loyal. He needs them to believe they chose to be loyal. Not force, not threat, belief. Belief installed so deeply that the subject defends it as their own, fights for it as their own, and turns against anyone who threatens it, not because the belief is correct, but because the belief has become structural. Force is expensive, visible, and temporary. Belief is free, invisible, and permanent. Control the story, and you do not need to control the person. The person controls themselves. Every network, every algorithm, every media system operating today is running Machiavelli's blueprint. Not because they read the prints, because the architecture works regardless of who builds it. Now, here is where the architecture gets mechanical, because the installation is not a single moment. It is a process. And the process has 3 components that have not changed since Gutenberg accidentally gave the system its first industrial tool: the medium, the repetition, and the emotional frame. In 1455, Gutenberg printed the first Bible and created the most powerful weapon in the history of human control. Not the Bible, the press. Within 60 years, Martin Luther used it to dismantle the Catholic Church's monopoly on truth, not with theology, but with distribution. Short pamphlets, common language, emotional framing that confirmed existing resentment. By the time Rome understood what was happening, an entire continent had received a new installation. Every new medium since then has removed one more layer of friction between the installation and the nervous system. The press required literacy. Radio required nothing. A man could be installed while washing dishes. Television bypassed language. The installation entered through the eyes. And the algorithm removed the final barrier: choice. The installation arrives before a man asks for it. Tailored to his specific wound, delivered at 2 in the morning when his defenses are lowest. The algorithm knows his wound before his wife does. The repetition is what converts the installation from information to identity. A statement heard once is a claim, heard 7 times, a possibility, heard 21 times, a fact. Not because evidence improved, because the brain uses a shortcut no school has ever taught anyone to override. If something feels familiar, the brain categorizes it as true, not probably true, true. The brain cannot distinguish between something it has verified and something it has simply encountered enough times. Marcus Aurelius identified this mechanism 2,000 years ago in the Meditations. He wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts." He was describing the repetition component of the installation before the word existed. The Stoics understood that the mind does not passively receive information. The mind is dyed by it. Every repeated exposure is not a neutral event, it is a coloring. And a mind that has been colored by the same source, the same framing, the same emotional frequency for years, that mind is not thinking, that mind is tinted. And the tint feels like clarity because the mind has forgotten what the original color looked like. Cato the Elder proved the mechanism with mathematical precision. When Rome wanted Carthage destroyed, Cato ended every speech, regardless of topic, with the same sentence: Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. After a debate about grain prices, after a discussion about aqueducts, after a vote on road maintenance, the same 6 words, for years, until the Senate stopped hearing it as a statement and started hearing it as a fact. And when the vote came, the destruction of an entire civilization passed as common sense. The content was irrelevant. The frequency was the mechanism. There is a darkly comedic quality to the fact that this mechanism now operates openly and nobody flinches. A talking point distributed across 12 networks in the same news cycle, using the same phrasing, the same cadence, the same emotional inflection, as if 12 mouths were reading from the same page. And anyone who notices the synchronization is dismissed, because the installation includes a subroutine that categorizes pattern recognition as conspiracy thinking. The system does not need to hide. It only needs to make the noticing feel socially expensive. Now, the emotional frame. This is the component most people never see because they are too busy arguing about content to notice how the content made them feel. Robert Greene identified this in Law 6, court attention at all costs. Attention is not neutral. Attention that is captured through emotion bypasses the critical faculties entirely. The viewer is not analyzing. The viewer is reacting. And a reacting viewer is a viewer being installed. There are 3 emotional frames that the narrative architecture uses because these 3 bypass critical thinking like a blade through wet paper. Fear, identity, disgust. Fear is the oldest tool in the architecture. A frightened population does not analyze, it reacts. And a population that reacts will accept any installation that promises safety. Rome manufactured the Carthaginian threat for decades after Carthage had been reduced to a trading city with no military capacity. The threat was not real, the fear was real, and the fear authorized everything. Watch any network, any country, any language, and count the stories built on fear in the first 15 minutes. The fear is the door. Everything that walks through it is an installation. Identity is more dangerous than fear because identity is invisible. When a belief fuses with who a person is, when "I believe this" transforms into "I am the kind of person who believes this," the belief becomes structurally impossible to challenge. A study at Yale confirmed this. Presenting contradictory evidence to a person whose belief is identity-fused does not weaken the belief. It triggers the same neurological response as a physical threat. Cortisol spikes. The amygdala fires. The body prepares for combat. The person is not thinking. The installation is defending itself using the host's own hormones. This is why arguments about politics do not end with one person changing their mind. They end with two people exhausted and more entrenched. Every argument about an identity-fused belief makes the wall thicker. The system does not need to prevent questioning, it only needs to fuse the belief with the self. After that, the host does the protecting for free, and disgust is the frame that manufactures enemies. In 1994, Radio Television Libre des Mille Collines broadcast from Kigali for 11 months before the first machete was raised. The broadcasts did not call for violence. They called Tutsi people cockroaches, vermin, disease carriers. For 11 months, the disgust frame ran until the violence that followed did not feel like murder. It felt like hygiene, cleaning, clearing, cutting the tall trees. The listeners were not monsters. They were neighbors who had shared meals for decades. The disgust frame did not create new people. It overwrote existing ones. And the man who held the machete believed the disgust was moral, not manufactured. The same frame runs in every news cycle where a population is described using language designed to shrink them. The dehumanizing adjective before the noun. The photograph chosen to trigger revulsion rather than recognition. The century changes. The architecture does not. Epictetus, a Stoic born a slave who understood control from the inside, wrote that it is not things that disturb people, but their judgments about things. The event is neutral. The frame is the installation. And the person running the frame believes the frame is their judgment. The Stoic project, the entire Stoic project, was learning to see the frame before the frame sees you. A woman who reads the room faster than everyone in it recognized this 3 paragraphs ago. She recognized that these frames do not require governments or genocides. They operate at the dinner table. The partner who manufactures fear of abandonment every time the conversation gets honest. The friend who fuses their identity with the friendship so that questioning it feels like an attack on their person. The family member who uses disgust to isolate a relative from the one person telling the truth. The narrative architecture scales down to a 2-person room and runs with the same precision it runs at the national level. She has been reading this architecture her entire life. She does not need the Stoics to tell her. She has been Epictetus without the credit. Now the lens turns, and this is the part that costs the most. An intelligent man who has been listening for 15 minutes has been nodding. He has been thinking about brainwashed friends, installed family members, programmed colleagues who watch the wrong network and cannot see the machine. He has been cataloging other people's software. But Green wrote Law 19 for this exact moment. Know who you are dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. And the wrong person in this context is the man in the mirror. A man who catalogs other people's installations without examining his own is the most dangerous kind of installed, the kind who believes the diagnosis only applies outward. The same narrative architecture that installed beliefs in every person he has been mentally cataloging, installed beliefs in him, different network, same mechanism, different algorithm, same architecture. And the proof is available right now. There is a belief he holds that, if challenged, would not produce curiosity. It would produce chest tightening. That tightening is the diagnostic. The speed of it, faster than thought, faster than analysis, is the signature that the belief was not chosen. It was manufactured. And the manufacturer has an interest, and the interest is never the host's well-being. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But the power over the mind requires seeing the mind's current software. And most people have never audited the code. They have only ever run it and called the running thinking. Remember that. Now Edward Bernays enters the architecture. And this is where the machine turns truly cynical. Bernays, Freud's nephew, discovered the gear that Machiavelli missed and that Goebbels used too crudely. Not force, not fear, desire. He did not tell people what to believe. He made them want to believe it. He engineered the link between bacon and breakfast, not because bacon was healthier, but because the pork industry paid him to manufacture a manufactured truth that felt like common sense. He engineered the link between diamonds and love, not because diamonds had value, but because De Beers needed a manufactured truth that would survive generations. Both installations are still running. A man who eats bacon for breakfast and proposes with a diamond has never heard the name Edward Bernays, but Bernays wrote the software, and the man would fight to defend those preferences as his own. Because the installation does not feel like software, it feels like taste, it feels like tradition, it feels like identity. Bernays published his method in 1928 inches, a book titled Propaganda. First sentence: the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Printed in the open, no outrage. Because the installation had already taught the population that manipulation is something that happens to other countries. The tools Bernays had were newspapers and public events. The tools now are algorithms that deliver the installation the way water erodes stone, one recommended video at a time, one suggested article at a time, until a man's entire reality has been sculpted by a system he never consented to, never noticed, and will defend with cortisol as his own worldview. Bernays would weep. The machine he built by hand now runs itself. This is the channel where the architecture gets named, not the politics, not the sides. The architecture underneath all of it. The narrative architecture that builds the sides, manufactures the opinions, installs the beliefs, then disappears so completely that the person carrying the installation will defend it with cortisol while calling the defense free thought. The previous video on this channel exposed the same architecture at the individual level, how the system installs vulnerabilities disguised as virtues, and how manipulators read those installations in 30 seconds. The concept was virtue packaging. Virtue packaging and manufactured truth are the same machine at different altitudes. One installs behavior, the other installs belief. A man who sees one without the other has half the map. And half a map in this territory is more dangerous than no map at all. Subscribe, not for content. For the operating system underneath every headline, every argument, every belief that feels original but was manufactured before arrival. Not subscribing is choosing to keep factory software running. And factory software is what the narrative architecture was designed to install. Now here is what changes with this knowledge, and these are weapons, not affirmations. Most people will not use them. That is why most people remain installed. The first weapon, the Stoic pause. Epictetus taught that between the event and the reaction, there is a space. The installation eliminates that space. It makes the reaction feel simultaneous with the event, so the person never notices the gap where choice should live. The weapon is restoring the gap. When a headline arrives and the chest tightens, do not read the next sentence. Sit in the tightening. Ask, is this fear, identity, or disgust? Name the frame. The moment the frame is named, it loses its invisibility, and an emotional frame that has been seen cannot operate as if it were the viewer's own judgment. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every morning. He wrote his reactions down. He audited his own emotional frames before the day's events could install new ones. That is not ancient philosophy. That is a daily software audit. And it is the single most dangerous habit a man can develop against the narrative architecture. The second weapon, the source chain audit. Green wrote in Law 30, "Make your accomplishments seem effortless." The narrative architecture follows this law perfectly. The installation arrives looking like common sense, like everyone agrees, like this is just how things are. The weapon is tracing the chain backward. Every belief arrived through a medium. Someone built it, someone distributed it, someone wrapped it in an emotional frame and delivered it at the right moment. The question is never, is this true? The question is, who manufactured this and who benefits from me believing it? Apply this to every headline consumed in the last 7 days, every belief held about the current war, every opinion about the economy, the government, the other side. Trace each one backward. Find the source, find the frame, find the beneficiary. A man who does this for 1 week will never consume a headline the same way again. Not because he becomes cynical, because he becomes literate. And literacy is the thing the narrative architecture cannot survive. The third weapon, the discomfort test. Manufactured truths are always comfortable. They confirm what the tribe believes. They flatter the group. They demonize the enemy. They require nothing except agreement. Seneca wrote that a man who agrees with everything has examined nothing. The weapon is seeking the belief that costs something: status, comfort, tribal belonging. A belief that costs the believer something is almost certainly closer to the architecture than one that costs nothing. Because the narrative architecture cannot install discomfort, it can only install relief. And relief that arrives before the question has been fully examined is not insight, it is anesthesia. The fourth weapon, read architecture, not content, and distrust consensus. When a headline arrives, do not ask what it says. Ask what emotional frame it uses: fear, identity, or disgust. What behavior does the installation produce? Who benefits? When everyone agrees and nobody is uncomfortable, the installation is running perfectly. Seneca warned that the mob is the worst judge of the good. Consensus is not evidence of truth. Consensus is evidence of distribution. The man who holds a belief that costs him his tribe is closer to the architecture than the man whose beliefs cost nothing. The woman who reads architecture in every room already operates with these weapons. She does not argue about content. She reads frames. She traces source chains. She notices which beliefs produce tightening when challenged and which ones sit loosely. She does this quietly, without performance. She changed the locks on her own installation years ago, not with anger but with stoic precision, and the narrative architecture that used to run inside her stopped, not because she fought it, because she saw it. And software that has been seen cannot run invisibly. The two men watching the same war on different screens are not enemies. They are the same man, same architecture, different channel. The system needs them fighting about content, because two men arguing about which screen is real will never ask who built both screens. The moment that question replaces the argument, the installation cracks. Not because the truth emerges, because the truth was never the point. The arguing was the point. And that question right now, in this second, is either producing curiosity or producing tightening. Notice which one. The answer is the diagnostic type installed if manufactured truth, named something that has been running without a name. Type architecture if the three frames became visible in an argument that has been running in the background of a relationship. Type defended if the mirror flip the moment the lens turned produced tightening instead of curiosity. These are not labels. They are the first honest words most people will ever speak about the software running in their own skull. Subscribe. A man who now carries the terms manufactured truth, the installation and narrative architecture, and the 5 weapons that dismantle them, sees a layer that was invisible 30 minutes ago. That vision is perishable. Every news cycle, every algorithm, every argument is designed to push it back under the surface. Every video on this channel is a piece of the system that keeps the architecture lit. Miss one, and the installation resumes. There is a video on this channel that shows the same machine at the personal level, how the system packages vulnerabilities as virtues, and how manipulators read those packages in 30 seconds. The concept is virtue packaging. The population-level architecture here and the personal-level architecture there are the same manufacturing line. A man who sees one without the other sees the machine, but not himself inside it. And that blind spot is where the installation lives. This is your cold awakening.